Yeah, good day. Today's topic in economics A level is monopoly and monopsony. So we're talking about monopoly and monopsony. Basically, we're talking about a single seller and a single buyer. But let's go down, please. Yeah, monopoly and monopsony. So, yeah, monopoly and monopsony are situations where one firm dominates the market. In case of monopoly, it is a single seller of a good or service. So when we talk about monopoly, we're talking about a single seller. That means a single producer of a good or a single producer or provider of a service. That is what monopoly is. Whereas for monopsony, it is a single buyer of a good or service. So for monopsony, we're talking about a single buyer that is available in the market for a certain product or certain service. So a single buyer for a good or service is monopsony. A single seller of good or service is monopoly. So we'll go down, please. So here it says assumptions of monopoly. The assumption of monopoly are that it has the following characteristics. So when you're talking about assumptions, we're talking about the features of monopoly. So let's see what the features are. Number one, the assumptions of monopoly are that it has the following characteristics. So the first one, there is only one firm in the industry, the monopolist. So whatever we call monopoly, it means that there's only one firm in that industry, which means it is only one business, it is only one supplier of goods in that industry. And what's an industry? An industry is a combination of firms. So here we're talking about, for example, the educational industry. We're having just a school in the educational industry in a country. That is what we call monopoly. So that means we have a monopolist in that industry. So barriers to entry prevent new firms from entering the market. So another characteristic or feature of the monopoly is barriers to entry. And when we talk about barriers to entry, we're talking about the blockade, stopping other businesses or stopping other firms from setting up into that industry. That is what barrier is about. So a monopoly has the only one supplying good or service in that industry. Two, there's always a very high barrier to entry in such industry. That means no firm is allowed to go into that industry. So the third one, the monopolist is a short-run profit maximizer. So a monopoly thinks about right now, it wants to make profit as soon as possible. So it thinks about the short term. It thinks about making profit making the highest profit that is ever available in that industry as soon as possible. That is what we mean by a short-run profit maximizer. So they said there are many industries in the world economy which possesses most of all these characteristics. In Cyprus, the Electronic Authority of Cyprus is an example of a near monopoly in the electricity industry, as this is the dominant firm in the industry. So we call it a monopoly because it's dominating the industry. It's the only firm that takes dominance in that industry. So they are citing an example about Cyprus here, which the Electricity Authority is what, and it's close to be a monopoly. So example was made here. So they said in a pure monopoly, there is only one firm in the market. It is a near monopoly because maybe there are other firms that are not dominating, but it is a near monopoly, basically because the electricity is inevitable. So that means probably the government of such country or the government of Cyprus takes over electricity. So we have a pure monopoly. Why do we call it pure monopoly? We call it pure monopoly because it is the only firm in that market. So there's no any other firm or closed firm or closer to that industry. There's no any other substitute in that industry. So because there's no other substitute in that industry, we call it a pure monopoly. So we move on. As they said, there is only, okay. However, in many markets, there are a number of firms that have monopoly power. These occurs when the firm is able to control the price it charges for its products in the market. So a firm is considered as having monopoly power because it has the ability to control the prices. So here is the only seller, but probably there's government in that country. So the government of such country might have influence on the prices. But here, if a monopolist has the monopoly power, it means it is in charge of the prices it charges for its products in the market. So we go to sources of monopoly power. So here is the road. Monopolies acquire and maintain power over their markets for a variety of reasons. So what are the reasons why monopoly try to acquire or maintain their power over the markets? Over their markets for a variety of over the markets. One, barriers to entry and exit. Monopolies are protected from new entrants by barriers to entry and exit. So, which means they don't allow new businesses to set up in such industry. So, because new businesses are not setting up in that industry, that means there's barriers to entry. And in as much as there's no business coming into the business, there's no business coming that's going to be out of the business. It is only the monopolies that is in charge. So this includes legal barriers, sunk cost, capital cost, economies of scale, anti-competitive practices, and marketing barriers, which could include advertising. So by keeping out new entrants, monopolists can control the market. The higher the barriers to entry, the stronger the power of the monopolist over its market. So what they're saying is this: there are different ways in which there are different strategies monopolists can use to ensure that there is barrier to entry. One of them is anti-competitive practices, which means they're not allowing other businesses to set in. They're not allowing other businesses to set in. Economies of scale, which means they have the ability to buy in larger quantities and to be able to sell at a lower price. Then the capital cost, the cost of setting up the business might be so high that little businesses or small firms cannot have that financial capability to. Legal barriers, they might be able to, they might be able to get authority from government that to allow them to be the only ones selling in such industry. So, product differentiation. So the second reason is product differentiation and the number of near competitors. Here they wrote, some monopolies sell products which are clearly differentiated from rival products. For example, households have to buy electricity from an electricity supplier. Gas, oil, or batteries are very poor substitutes for electricity. Similarly, on the route between the Spanish cities of Madrid and here, basically what we're saying is product differentiation and the number of near competitors. What they're saying is that some monopolies sell products which are clearly differentiated from those of their competitors. For example, here they made the example of electricity, comparing electricity which has close substitutes like gas, oil, or batteries, but they are all poor substitutes. They can never be electricity. So electricity is electricity. It cannot be. It doesn't have a substitute that can really, make it fight for, that can make it really think it has a competitor. So batteries, generators, gas, oil, they cannot, give us the same comfort that electricity is going to give to us. So this makes it to be what inevitable, and that increases its monopoly power. So we'll go on. So that's all about monopoly. That's all about monopoly. Thank you.